Thank you, Cole. Hello, everybody. As usual, since we're meeting every other week now, there's so much going on. It's just hard to choose what to talk about and what to leave out. But I wanted to focus to start with the massacre of the journalists at the Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis that happened just a few days ago, because it illustrates the sort of media environment that we're in and Israel's techniques of obfuscation and misdirection throughout this whole genocide. So you probably have all seen the story. A bunch of journalists who are stringers for Reuters and Al Jazeera and other news media that are not allowed to send their own reporters into Gaza were gathered on a balcony, which they of the Nasser Hospital, which they regularly do, and was well known to everybody. The Israelis apparently fired a tank shell at them and killed a number of them, five or six outright. And then 15 or 17 minutes later, when rescuers had come to treat the wounded and clear out the bodies, they fired another shell at the same balcony, killing a total of 20 people. Now, we all know, or you should know by now, that Israel's default is to lie when they're able. And if, as in this case, they can't say it didn't happen because the whole thing was caught on video, they send out a sort of storm of different explanations. I call it maximum bullshit in the sense that some of it may stick, and in any case, it will mostly be reported, their point of view will be reported respectfully in the mainstream media. And then in a few days, it will all blow over and people will forget about it. And this has been their tactic effectively since the beginning of their attack on Gaza. And of course, it's aided by the fact that since the major news media outside Israel are not allowed to send reporters in, the news from Gaza depends on Palestinians reporting. And of course, there's a built in bias or willingness to believe that they're not real journalists. They're, partisan, they're Hamas and so on. It's a very effective strategy. And to believe that Israel has not been targeting journalists intentionally is just, you have to be very naive. They've killed, it's hard to know the exact number, certainly over 200 journalists in Gaza during the course of this genocide, maybe as high as approaching 300. And, it helps to limit the news that's coming out of Gaza and intimidates the rest. And, the fact that that Western, that is mainstream media in Europe and the United States and elsewhere are not allowed to send reporters into Gaza is kind of glossed over. So Israel's point of view is always reported. In this case, they first said, Netanyahu said, this was a terrible mistake. We're very sorry. And then it was reported that the Israeli army thought that Hamas had a monitoring video camera on this balcony, and that's why they shot at it. And the unit that made the attack said that it had been approved by the higher ups in the Israeli command. But of course, that doesn't explain why they shot again 15 minutes later and killed the rescuers who are coming. So it's all bullshit, but it confuses people and allows them to sort of create doubt and so on, at least for those consumers of the mainstream media. And, that goes for every aspect of their actions in Gaza. When the UN issued a report last week, sort of in detail, explaining why there is a famine now in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Of course, there's been hunger and malnutrition for a long time in the whole strip. Israel basically said, no, it's a lie. It's not happening. It's fake news. And they have some dedicated media and reporters that expand on that story. And then, but in the Israeli press, which is rarely reported, in the Israeli press in Hebrew, popular media figures are celebrating every one of these massacres and actions. And of course, members of Netanyahu's government are celebrating them and asking for more of the same. And in fact, there was a poll among Jewish Israelis last week that indicated a very strong majority, I think nearly 80% of Jewish Israelis uh, believe that there were no innocent people in Gaza. And that, of course, means that any of them can be killed with justification by the Israeli forces. So, as time goes on, it becomes more and more clear that Israel's aim in Gaza is not even to rescue its own prisoners, alive and dead, but to do whatever it can to keep up the assault on Gaza, to wipe it down, wipe it out, all the physical infrastructure, press the population into a concentration camp in the south, and then they hope somehow encourage people to leave or be allowed to leave, and then that will be the end of the story. And it's been reported again. It comes up and then goes away that even Biden administration officials have reported, again, I've only seen this in the Israeli press, that Netanyahu at every turn did whatever he could to forestall an agreement of any kind to stop the attacks on Gaza, and even if that meant not getting the hostages, the prisoners, home. So this is Israel's aim, and the rest is all bullshit. And unfortunately, it's bullshit that's repeated in our press pretty much. Despite all of this, public opinion around the world, including in the United States, has turned decisively against Israel. And this is creating problems for them and problems for the political leaders in Europe and the United States. You probably have seen recent polls. I mean, the Democrats are overwhelmingly against U.S. support for Israel. They overwhelmingly believe Israel is carrying out a genocide. And although the majority of Republicans still remains pro-Israeli, but younger Republicans are increasingly moving away from that position, which is very worrisome to the Israeli authorities. So it's a problem for Israel, and it's a problem for the political leaders in Europe and America, who, for various reasons, are committed to a policy of supporting Israel no matter what. But it's making them very uncomfortable. So increasingly, leaders in Europe are chastising Israel, threatening that they're going to recognize the state of Palestine for whatever that means at this point. And increasingly, politicians in the United States are hand-wringing, criticizing Israel. We need more aid going to Gaza and the starvation, oh, how terrible it is. But the common denominator of all these establishment criticisms is the reluctance to do anything meaningful that will put pressure on Israel. And that goes both for Europe and the United States. And a good illustration of that took place at a meeting of the Democratic National Committee yesterday, where a young Democratic activist had submitted a resolution demanding an arms embargo against Israel, condemning the settlements, and demanding that a Palestinian state be recognized. In response, the Israeli lobby, the Democratic branch of the Israeli lobby, had put in another rather toothless resolution, sort of saying, oh, it's terrible, all the suffering in Gaza, and we think something should be done about it. And by the way, we support a two-state solution. And there was a firestorm of pressure about this. And in the end, the Democrats didn't know what to do. They defeated the more decisive resolution by a voice vote, so we don't know how the vote actually took place. And they passed this toothless one. And then the chair of the DNC promptly put it aside and said, we're going to try to have a process to find a middle ground that can satisfy all sides. And, good luck with that. I mean, the Democrats have had it with Israel and with AIPAC, and especially the younger Democrats. So that trend of public opinion will only get more decisive because the few Democrats who are older who support Israel will be fading away. So the Democratic Party is nearly unanimous, overwhelmingly against Israel's policy in Gaza. against U.S. aid for Israel, and in considering what Israel is doing in Gaza, genocide. And a new poll today just said there was an absolute majority, almost 2-to-1, of Americans who were opposed to U.S. military aid to Israel altogether, and that includes Democrats and Republicans. So the trend of public opinion is very much in our favor, but until it gets traction with the political decision makers, it's going to be a long time. What needs to happen is, for the first time, some Democrats to be defeated in primaries because of their reluctance to criticize or put pressure on Israel. And that could happen. There is a raft of primary candidates all over the country, Democrats who are trying to get nominated for House and Senate seats, who are actively campaigning on the basis of a different policy toward Israel. And if some of them win, it will be a political earthquake. So we shouldn't forget the West Bank. Again, because of the horrors in Gaza, people don't pay as much attention to that. But the slow motion genocide in the West Bank has been increasing in tempo lately. It's not so slow motion anymore. Every week, one or more Palestinian villages or towns are attacked and destroyed. One village in the West Bank had 10,000 of its olive trees bulldozed by the Israeli army in retaliation for a supposed shot fired against an Israeli settler that was invading their village. And just this last week, the Israelis invaded Ramallah, the putative capital of the Palestinian Authority, and Nablus, the largest city in the West Bank, even though they are expressly forbidden from doing that, according to the Oslo Accords that they signed, because that's Area A. But as we also know, or should know, Israel never keeps to agreements it signs when it finds anything inconvenient about them, and basically can do it without any serious consequences. This is a pattern that goes back for since the founding of Israel, basically. So in the United States, just a few things worth mentioning. The Trump administration ruled that wounded Palestinian children would no longer be allowed to come to the United States for treatment, even though the cost of it was paid by privately raised charities. At the same time that many, we don't know how many, but it could be hundreds of Israeli IDF wounded soldiers are in the United States getting rehabilitation services. Speaking of Israelis in the United States, you probably also know that a high-level cyber expert from Israel was caught in a pedophile trap in Las Vegas and was allowed to leave the country on bail, which almost never happens. I mean, bail is meant to ensure that someone shows up for their court appearances. And of course, an Israeli with a foreign passport is very much a flight risk. But he was allowed to leave the country with no problem. And today he was scheduled to have his arraignment. And of course, he didn't show up. So this is the sort of different way that the law is applied in the United States. Locally, we should note that Ayanna Pressley was the co-author of a letter strongly condemning Israel's starvation policy in Gaza and focusing on the horrific thing that they are not allowing baby formula to enter the Gaza Strip. This is, always dangerous for newborn infants, but especially because so many of the mothers in Gaza are not able to breastfeed because they themselves are starving. This is a potential death sentence for infants in Gaza. So it was a letter that was signed by 100 Democrats, which is, and that included McGovern, of course, but also Trahan and Lynch, who are in that sort of middle ground of possibly persuadable people on our issue in Massachusetts. And of course, even though the European countries are mainly doing symbolic chastising of Israel, here and there's some actual action that that might have a meaningful pressure on Israel. Spain has refused to send or transship arms to Israel. Good for them. And Norway's sovereign wealth fund, which is the largest in the world, basically all of Norway's oil money goes into their national wealth fund, has been divesting from Israeli firms lately, and Caterpillar Tractor, which is a U.S. firm, which has supplied the tractors that are destroying buildings all over Gaza and the West Bank. So this is a concrete blow, divestment, one of the first significant acts of divestment against Israel anywhere. The other thing I don't want to leave out. So Israel also announced that they were going to launch a settlement program in an area just east of Jerusalem called the E1. That's what it's called on Israeli maps, which would effectively cut off Jerusalem completely from the rest of the West Bank, and also effectively bisect the West Bank between north and south. And although liberal commentators say, "Oh, this is bad," but it's not catastrophic. Of course, the settlements minister in Netanyahu's government was overt in saying this was a measure to perpetually eliminate the possibility of a Palestinian state in the West Bank. So Western commentators make excuses. Israelis to themselves tell the truth, but it's not often reported. Just very briefly, in Lebanon, Israel is also violating its ceasefire agreement daily, and the U.S. is putting pressure on Lebanon to knuckle under, while Israel has not withdrawn its occupying troops from the southern part of Lebanon, as they were committed to do in the ceasefire agreement. And of course, they are deepening their further occupation of the southern part of Syria, continue to bomb and set up military bases extending almost up to Damascus, and have said that their position is they won't withdraw their troops from the rest of Syria. They've already occupied and annexed the Golan Heights. They won't withdraw unless Syria agrees that south of Damascus will be a demilitarized zone. And again, this contradicts the ceasefire agreement that was signed after 1974, which of course Israel is free to deny whenever it's convenient. So let me stop there. I could go on a lot more, but we have business to take care of. So be happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure there's a lot that I left out.
Thanks, Jeff. Great update. Questions and comments?
Jeff, it's Amy Merrill.
Sorry. Could you raise your hand, Amy? Zarina, let's go next.
Yeah.
Okay. Mine is a quick question. At what point, Jeff, would you call this racism? Would you call it racism at all? Because I feel it's blatant. It's disgusting.
Israel was founded as a racist enterprise, elevating the status of Jewish inhabitants over non-Jews. And of course, saying that, by the way, makes me in violation of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. That means I'm an anti-Semite. But with respect to Gaza, one of the reasons why people do not connect and maybe doubt the reports of people who are in Gaza and reporting about it is because they're Arabs. They're not the nice, international correspondents from the New York Times and, CNN. They're these shady looking Arabs that in our racist ideology are prone to lie. So, and of course, this is Israel's intent. This is why they don't allow, outside reporters to come into Gaza, because they can always claim, they're all Hamas, all of these Hamas, or they're liars. One of the
You're Hamas and I'm Hamas for just talking about it too.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thanks. Mike.
Yeah, I'm just so curious, and I've gotten a letter printed. I don't know if I sent it to you guys. I thought I sent it to everybody. Because looking at the numbers which are in the street of Israelis being beaten and arrested because they want the ceasefire, not that they like Palestinians or that they want a two-state solution or anything like that, but the fact remains why are we not finding common cause? I mean, even if it just gets as far as a ceasefire and a detail like the Witkoff type agreement, and yet it seems like none of our people are taking advantage of this opportunity to say, let's support those people. Those is you want to be Israel first or whatever. Why not support those Israelis first? You know, it seems like an opportunity squandered. Like we're just pretending. Oh yeah, there's some people being beaten up, and you know, and some of it's pretty graphic that I've seen on videos. There's not kidding around. I mean, they really don't want those people out there in the street embarrassing the government. You know, so and yet we're backing a government which is pretty well discredited. I mean, the guy's damaged goods. I mean, as soon as peace breaks out, he's in serious trouble because he's got to answer, you know, how did he let it all happen? Well, and all the other issues he has. And I'm just curious if anybody has any kind of an explanation why our people aren't taking advantage of that opportunity to say, on that basis, we're going to demand a ceasefire and maybe do something more meaningful. Do you have any idea why they're just ignoring this beautiful opportunity?
I'm not sure what it would mean to support those Israelis who are opposed to Netanyahu's policies, specifically about the hostages. You know, Israeli society is in disarray in a lot of ways politically, but not so much when it comes to regarding the rights of the Palestinians. And the 20 or 22% of Israelis who are not Jewish, of course, are completely silenced. They are really fearful. People in the Arab community in Israel, people are arrested for Facebook posts, having sympathy to the people dying in Gaza. So, yeah, you know, I mean, it's not clear what it would mean to support the people who are opposing Netanyahu, and frankly, it's a little bit dangerous, given that I said, you know, a strong majority of Jews in Israel thinks there are no innocent people in Gaza. The tactic of sort of somehow elevating the more liberal members of the Israeli Jewish community and blaming it specifically on Netanyahu and his very far right-wing government is a way of excusing what Israel is as a society, to my mind, anyway. That the problem is much deeper than Netanyahu and the right-wing ministers of the government. It's something really profound and depraved in Israeli society, Jewish Israeli society as a whole. And I don't think we can, you know, usefully make the distinction between one part of that or another.
Okay, thanks. Amy, you had a comment.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks. And I'm just wondering if you or anyone else has any update on the comments and statements that are going around about Israel starting a war with Iran. Sometimes I hear that it could start this week or next month, sometimes in December. I'm just wondering if anybody has any more information about that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I read probably the same things you have. There's a lot of speculation that another round is coming.
Yes.
With Israel's attack on Iran, but it's hard to know. I mean, certainly one advantage for Netanyahu is that Israeli Jewish society is overwhelmingly in favor of hurting Iran. So this could be a political move to sort of bolster his standing in Israeli society, but I don't know. It's also true that Israel took some hits in the last round of its attack on Iran, and you know, I don't know how anxious they are to repeat that, but I think you never be right to underestimate how depraved and crazy Israel is behaving, not only in Gaza but in the region. So yes, anything is possible.
Thanks.
Thanks, Julie.
Speaking of the region, and I know we've talked about this before, but here in these meetings, but it's profound and depraved that the Gulf countries are still silent. Is there any hope there?
Well, you know, when you say the countries, you mean the leadership, because none of them are remotely democratic. You know, whether they'll be, I mean, obviously, it's pretty certain that public opinion in those countries, in Saudi Arabia, in the UAE and Qatar and so on are pretty aghast at what Israel is doing in Gaza, but none of them are democracies, and they're kind of U.S. supported monarchies or autocracies, and so far, the popular will doesn't have much influence in what decisions are made. That goes for Egypt and Jordan as well. And one of the reasons to sort of keep that situation from boiling over, Israel, of course, has banned Al Jazeera, the Qatar-based news network, from its own territory, and has killed as many Al Jazeera journalists that have survived in Gaza as it could. So, they want to keep Arab public opinion in the dark as much as possible. But, Israel doesn't have a lot of friends among the people in the rest of the Middle East. They do have friends among the elites who depend on, who make a lot of money from their relationship to Israel and the United States. But as tourism increases with these places, Israelis increasingly get a very bad reputation because their behavior, of course, it's not 100%, but sometimes stereotypes have some validity. Israelis behave badly when they're abroad. And the more contact they have with local people, the more they are disliked in general. I can speak to this from personal opinion in various places. So.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, everyone, for the great discussion. Let's transition to our organizing discussion. Let me just drop the spotlight. So first we have the base building discussion. Elizabeth, can you update us?
Sure. Hi, y'all. So we had our first base building meeting to talk more about how to bring people in. We kind of were going